It's Sunday.
It's Sunday. Woohoo!
It feels like Sunday is becoming our intellectual smart person Sunday, maybe Smart Sunday.
Maybe. Smart Sunday.
Maybe.
There you go.
Smart Sunday. So, because we've done a derecho on Sunday, we've done wildfires on Sunday. We did buzzards, or not buzzards. We did vultures. I don't like to call them buzzards. Turkey vultures. By the way, my friend Polly, who joined us last week, went out and got that book that you had recommended. So she had shown a picture on Facebook. So good job, Anne. Good job. So that's awesome.
Exactly. Excellent.
That's right.
She'll love it.
That's good. So we're going to talk some fun weather stuff real quick because I got some peeps out there in the Denver, Colorado area, Denver, Littleton, and parts nearby. And it's my understanding that you guys set a record yesterday, that it was 100 degrees in Denver, Colorado yesterday, which set a new record for the latest in the year that it's ever been 100 degrees in Denver, which is fascinating. That it's going to be in the high 90s today, high 90s tomorrow, and then you guys are under a winter storm watch for 3 to 6 inches of snow on Tuesday, which is banging!
Sunbathing and skiing. Yay!
Totally. It's so funny because snow is going to hit the ground. It's going to be like... But the weirdest weather I've ever experienced has been in Colorado, where it's literally like 80 degrees, and then you can literally watch the cold front push through and boom. And then 10 minutes later, it's 40 degrees and snowing. So if you're in Colorado and this front happens to pass during the day, dude, take some video of it and let us see that, because it really is fascinating to watch that kind of weather phenomenon. You guys are going to experience something really interesting and crazy unique this week. So get some video footage of it so we can see it, because it's cool.
It's cool.
It is. Wait, I gotta show you this. Here's Marla is with me today, and she's so exhausted. Look at her. Look how exhausted she is. Oh, kitten, I know.
She's been like managing you all morning.
She has. Well, this is about the time she goes out and finds like a bowl or something to eat and bring to the house, and then hide it under the bed. So then I got to fish it out later. So. Good job, kitten. See, and I always can tell who's killing what, because if it's Betty, she'll just drop it in the mudroom. She'll come in, just drop it in the mud. It's her signature move, where Marla likes to bring it inside and play with it for a little while, and then hide it for later until it starts to stink. And then you're like, I got to get out the 4-iron and, you know.
It's like, oh, I forgot about that. Oh, yeah, that was fun. Is it still fun? No, it's not fun anymore. Okay, never mind.
No. So anyway, what about you? What's happening in Chelsea, Michigan?
Well, it's kind of cool and overcast today. So yeah, it's a little breezy. Might rain tomorrow. So they said it was supposed to be in the, I don't know, mid-70s today. I don't think it's 70 yet. So it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Duncan's out mowing, so it's a good day to mow because it's overcast and kind of chilly. And so, I mean, it's not really chilly. It's just
not
what
hot.
You think it's in August. It's like, or September. You're like, oh, it's in the 70s. Brr, until it's January. Like, oh, it's in the 40s. Yay, shorts. So
it's all relative, man. It's all relative.
Where you are, the time and place. Anyway, it's not a bad day. It's a nice day.
Good. Yeah, same here. It's cloudy and windy today. Maybe 75 degrees. It's humid though. You can feel it's going to do something later, but not yet. So and as fall approaches here, we are just a couple of weeks away from the equinox. Maybe time to start thinking about your indoor activities, like reading books, for instance, cuddled up next to the fire that you don't have, or me neither, reading a book.
The cat sitting on you, blocking the pages.
That's right. So working around your cat. And I love that. Because Betty will come sit right
the book up like this because you got 2 cats on you, and they're like annoyed because you're reading a book.
That's right. Instead of paying attention to them. So you had the idea of us breaking down our top 5 fiction books this week, which is a good idea, because I have to admit I don't read a lot of fiction anymore. Almost everything I read now is nonfiction, because I'm kind of hooked on it right now. But every now and then I will step back and read some fiction, and it's enjoyable. I like it. So So yeah.
I try to read. I read a lot of nonfiction. Most of what I'm reading right now is nonfiction, but I try to pick one fiction piece of fiction because it's a guilt for me. It's a guilty pleasure, and then I let myself. I'm like, yeah, but if you do this, then you can read nonfic or fiction for 20 minutes. So I usually put it on my Kindle. My parents got me a Kindle when I graduated from massage therapy school. So I usually like treat myself to a piece of Kindle fiction. So I like you. I read mostly nonfiction, but I do treat myself to one fiction book because I've got about 5 or 6 books I read at one time. So one of them is always fiction. The rest are usually nonfiction. So
Yeah.
like you, but it's this was way harder than the movie. Like putting our 5 movies together, this was way harder. So
I would agree. I lingered over number 5 for a really long time, and I actually switched it based on one that you had put in your honorable mention. I'm like, oh, I forgot about that book, and then I'm like, I want this one way more. So,
yeah.
Monica's with us from California. She said it's 100 degrees in California right now. God, it's hot out west. What the what? Yuck. I don't like to be hot. So, anyway, hey, let's talk.
Being hot. Okay, let's talk about snakes.
You're like a snake, man. You're like. Are you sure you're not like exothermic or something?
I'm like a lizard. I'm a lizard. I like to be in the sun, or a turtle.
Or no, endothermic. Endothermic. That's it. It's the wrong one.
Yeah. I'm a lizard. I'm sleeping in the sun always.
You are. I'm just the opposite of that. So I'm going to go and turn our brand off in the background there. Boom. Oh, that's better. So Anne, this was your idea. So you get to start us off of your top 5-ish fiction books.
Top 5, because this was, like I said, this was way harder than my movies. So I have my top 5, and my number 5 is actually a book that I read in 1983, and it was George Orwell's 1984, which is actually published in 1949. He wrote it in 1948. And then just changed the year. That's how he got the idea for the title. So that's why it was 1984. This is the first book that I ever loved and read more than one time. And I read this when I was 13. It just made this huge impression on me. You know how you're like 13 and you're kind of rebellious and you're trying to figure out who you are and what it's about. And this book was about the punishment of rebellion. And it just really, really spoke to me. And I've gone back to it. I read this book over 40 years ago, so I still keep going back to it, and that's why it had to be in my top 5, because decades later, I'm still thinking about this book. I do think, though, that George Orwell got one thing wrong. I don't think we have to worry about government watching us constantly. I think we have to worry about the corporations watching us constantly. And of course, we already have examples of that. Amazon, Google, Facebook, constantly monitoring us. How many times have you picked up your phone and you're like, oh, hey, how did they know I was looking for a new chicken coop?
Well, you don't even have to look it up. All you have to do is talk about it. And that just shows you how your devices are literally monitoring your every move and your every word. These people out there that are afraid that the flu shot is, so that the government can track you. I'm like, dude, they don't even need to put a flu shot in you to track you. Come on.
Exactly. They're just watching your phone. I'm like, every time I drive by like a Burger King, I get a Burger King coupon. It's like, hey, stop at Burger King. We have the shake. I'm like, I don't even go to Burger King, but I drove by one once, so therefore they know.
Close enough. No, this right on the money. Right on the money. So good job, George Orwell.
Thank you, George.
That book. Was it Mrs. Shane's class? I want to say Mrs. Shane had us reading that in 8th grade.
She either had that or Animal Farm.
I think she did. I think with my class, she did 1984 because I was an 8th grader in 1984.
1984.
Yeah. So, because I remember reading that book and it scared me so much. I didn't like it. I didn't like it because I found it so disturbing. And I thought, no, the world can't possibly be like this. Because, and that was when I was in my truly sunny yellow world where the only thing I really cared about were my Star Wars action figures. So that was just way too much for me. Yeah.
We were really different at 14, weren't we?
We were very different at 14, Ann Brothers.
Wow. Okay.
You were getting ready to like conquer the world, and I was hiding from it. I'm like, dear Princess Leia.
Okay, so my book number 4 is The Book of Ruth by Jane Hamilton, published in 1988. This was made into a movie. It is not very good, so don't watch it. However, read this book. It is about a young woman, Ruth, of course, growing up in a small rural town in central Illinois. She's overshadowed by a very domineering, very sad mother and a brilliant brother, a mathematician who's brilliant. And it is a very sad, sad book, but the poetry of the dialogue and her inner thought is so beautiful. It keeps you engaged in the story, even though her story is so bleak. In the end, towards the end, as she, finishes up this crucible of her life, she does find her voice, and it's very loud. It's kind of about this silent young woman and her observation of the tiny world around her. And it's very beautiful. It's I go back to, like I said, every book on my top 5 list is books I've probably read at least a half a dozen times, if not more. So I go back to this book every couple of years, and it reminds me to look at nature in its smallest places, like the weeds along the side of a building, that sort of thing. And then the other is to just about this young woman finding her voice, and she finds it in a loud, not very polite way. So anyway, very good book. Really, really, really good. It's bleak though, so if you're not interested in anything bleak right now, it can be a hard book to read. So this is where I kind of this is where I cheated a little bit. My number 3 is actually 3 books, and it's part of a trilogy, the MaddAddam trilogy by Margaret Atwood. So the first book is Oryx and Crake, which was published in 2003. The Year of the Flood, published in 2009, and MaddAddam, published in 2013. So it's a trilogy based on it's America in the future, after global warming and climate change has really decimated the population and shrunk the continent. And it's a number of characters. There's different main characters in each book, but they all overlap in all of the books. So you might get introduced to them in the first book and then learn more about them in the second or the third book, and vice versa. It's very, the thing is, when this came out in 2003, we were barely negotiating our cell phones, and they certainly weren't smartphones. So this book all of them are way ahead of their time. I mean, you could tell she really did a research on where technology and biological engineering and genetic engineering, where it would go in the future. So that's quite impressive. It is an example of why I think that government is less dangerous than corporations, because by the time it's set in a time where there is no government in America. It's only corporations who have their own armies. And you either live and work, you either live on a company compound and work for the company, or you live in the plebe lands, which is kind of a no man's land, and you survive the best you can. So it's fascinating, and it does have a hopeful ending. So you just have to get to the third book to get to it. And Margaret Atwood is awesome at giving us wonderful characters and amazing stories for you to think about. So
and she's just a crazy genius. She's a super genius, I think, in terms of her imagination and her vision as far as what we could be. Yeah, I dig her work as well. I just think she's like I said, I read The Handmaid's Tale in college, and again, just scared the poop out of me. Ugh. So, yeah. I haven't been able to watch the series yet because the book screwed me up so badly. I know I should.
Speaking of The Handmaid's Tale.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So my number 2 is actually 2 books. It's The Handmaid's Tale and The Testaments, which is the sequel to The Handmaid's Tale. So The Handmaid's Tale was in 1985. I read that when I was in high school. And then The Testament just came out last year in 2019. So I got to tell you, this series is very good on television. They did a nice job of adapting her book and then taking it to another level. Very good job of that. But it is brutal. It is brutal. In fact, the second season, I almost gave up on it because I'm like, if something doesn't happen that isn't torture, I'm done with this. So the third season carries it over a little bit, gives you a little more hope and I won't say optimism, but hope. Anyway, two excellent books. The first book is written strictly from June's point of view. It's all about what's going on in her head because her life is so regulated. There is nothing. She has no, even though she's constantly around people, she has no contact with people, if that makes sense. So the story can seem very isolating. Now, in the Testaments, I don't know if I should give this away, but I'm going to. You meet her daughter, and actually, you meet both of her daughters. So, so it's 15 years later, and what was really interesting about this book, if you've read The Handmaid's Tale, then you know about the aunts who are in. They run the domain of women in this dystopian society. And in the Testament, you get to know a lot about Aunt Lydia. Fascinating. It is fascinating. If you've ever seen yourself in this book, you're like, where would I end up in this book? I'm like, I'm afraid I'd end up being one of the ants. So
okay.
Fascinating. That is fascinating. I have to tell you, I didn't see that coming. I didn't see that part of the story coming at all. Really worthwhile to learn about Aunt Lydia. So, you like to think, hey, if the Nazis came, I'd be one of those people that, fought them and would hide people in my basement. I'm like, would you? So, makes you think about that.
Old saying, is it better to be in the devil's path, or better to be at the devil's side than in his path? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I hope I never have to know. So,
hang on, my husband's calling me. Doesn't he know I have a show right now? God.
Come on, dude. Oh, man.
Anyway, I declined his call. So.
And of course, this is a book that I've talked about once before when we talked about our favorite books. Number one is Dietland by Sari Walker, published in 2015. I read this book whenever I start feeling bad about my body, and it reminds me to, fight back, filled with rage. Excellent book. It's kind of a fairy tale, and it's about fighting back hard and not having to look good or be nice while you do it. And you know what? We need that right now. So
yeah, I believe we do, Ann Brothers. So yeah, I just got done reading this book again, and I'm actually reading it one more time because I convinced my little book club that I'm part of. We just got done reading. We did a little book study together of White Fragility, and now we're doing a book study of Dietland. I said I feel like this should be our next book, and so jazzed about that because I love this book and I like to talk about it. I like to think about it, and I think this is one of those books that every woman should read, especially if you have daughters.
Yes.
So we'll get to that. Yeah.
Yes.
So your honorable mentions, Ann Brothers.
Oh, this is a long list. My honorable mentions include World War Z, which almost made it into my top 5, but I really felt that I had to keep 1984 in my top 5. So World War Z, The Hobbit was one of the first books I loved. I read that fairly young. The Dog Stars. This is a really good book. It's a dystopian novel, which I have a thing for those. It has a very Cormac McCarthy sort of poetry to its prose. So it's a beautiful story. It will make you cry, and it's so beautifully written. I got Duncan to read it, and it's in his top 5. So
nice. Well done.
It doesn't even have a beer on the cover. So if you're a dude and you want to read some good fiction, of course, all 3, World War Z, The Hobbit, The Dog Star, Station 11, all great dude books. But, Jenny, you've talked about Station 11 before. Only Ever Yours. This is a short novel from an English author. It is brutal. It makes The Handmaid's Tale seem like a love letter.
All right, that's a reading.
I can't stop rereading this book. So if you really want to be depressed and feel bleak, Only Ever Yours. I can't tell you why. I just cannot turn away from this book. Gone Girl. I love this book. I especially love the parts written from Amy's point of view. I love Amy. God, I love her so much. So I want her to do seminars for women.
Fantastic. That's awesome.
Thomas Cromwell. This is a trilogy by Hilary Mantel, and Thomas Cromwell was an advisor to King Henry VIII from just before the time of rise of Anne Boleyn until just after his divorce, Henry VIII's divorce from Anne of Guise. So between his second wife and his fourth wife, and he was a very powerful man. There's not a lot written about him personally, so this is actually a fiction, historical fiction about Thomas Cromwell. There's 3 books: Wolf Hall, Bringing Up the Bodies, and The Mirror and the Light. Excellent. There's actually a miniseries, BBC, I think, miniseries of Wolf Hall. Excellent. Also very excellent. So if you want something, if you're looking for some historical fiction, really, really worthwhile. It's probably like 1,000 pages between all 3 books. So it really keeps you like, you're really like, yay.
In.
My next one is controversial, and that is Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. I have literally read this book a dozen times. I will suggest that while you read it, you should also read The World According to Fanny Davis, which is actually a memoir by her daughter, Bridget M. Davis, or Beloved. Probably Beloved would be your best choice. Or you could read The Color Purple or The Bluest Eye. But I think if you're going to read Gone with the Wind, you also really need to read Beloved and Dietland at the same time. Gone with the Wind is an epic story, and it is fascinating. But to really get a true idea of the hideousness of slavery and the hideousness of women's repression, you really need to read something modern against it so that you do not get the idea that this is a fairy tale. It is well worth reading, but I think you really need to do both. So if you really want to do a study, I would suggest Gone with the Wind with Beloved or with Dietland. Beloved is very difficult. It is brutal.
It's a hard read.
It's a really hard read. But yeah. I think it's a good juxtaposition between because they talked about, I know a lot of people are talking about, well, I'm not going to see that or read it. I'm like, I think you should read it because you should know where we came from, but you should understand where we are and what we really came from. So that's my argument for Gone with the Wind. And then finally, if you really just need to read some stupid, fun, sexy, I would suggest the Southern Vampire Mysteries, also known as the True Blood novels, also known as the Sookie Stackhouse novels by Charlaine Harris. Stupid, can't put them down, sexy vampire books. You need some escapism. The HBO True Blood, the first season was awesome. The rest of it was kind of lame. These books you won't be able to put them down. They're stupid fun. So if you need stupid fun, those are my best stupid fun. Yeah, that's my best recommendation for stupid fun.
Nice. Love it.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, there you go.
Cool. Tons of books. Yeah, Ann Brothers reads books, y'all. Books. So
books.
That is true. I am not as well read as my sister, but I do read books. You've got like 5 or 6 books. I've only got 3 books going right now. So, but I'm neck deep in the Alexander Hamilton biography right now, and I got to tell you, man, it's an eye opener. It's I would describe it also as being eerie in terms of the parallels between what was happening in say 1796 versus what's happening with our nation now. Eerily similar in terms of the partisanism, and that's one of the things that George Washington felt would break up this country would be overly partisan politics, and we're there. It's fascinating. So the end is nigh, but. All right. Anyway, my top favorite fiction, and I had originally put Gone Girl in as my number 5, and then you'd mentioned World War Z in your honorable mention. I'm like, oh, which one have I read more? I've read World War Z more. So, but I would agree, Gone Girl, and we'll talk about it when I get to my honorable mention. Well, we'll get there. Anyway, one of the things I noticed, Anne, is that I have a tendency towards apocalyptic fiction. I read a ton of apocalypse stories, and I don't know what that says about me. But I do read way too much, and you're going to see it in both my top 5 here and in my honorable mention. Mm-hmm. But if you've seen the movie, you have no clue what this book is about, because the movie is, other than there are zombies in the movie, there's nothing similar, in my opinion. They're not even close. So, and the movie's a fun watch. It's a good horror movie. It is. It's fun, good suspense, lots of jump out stuff, lots of you running right away from the zombies too. It's good. But do yourself a favor and read this book. It's fun, it's interesting, it's thoughtful, it's really well written. It will make you work to be something other than an F6. I'm not going to tell you what that is, but I feel like I'm somewhere in the C's or B's because I can cook and I can manage a kitchen, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Make no mistake, the lesson from this book is that when things really hit the fan, we are on our own. Do not look to your government for anything other than they're going to use you as a human shield or bait or both.
And this is a historical thing. So don't think it's like, oh, this will be the first time.
Oh, no. We're living that right now, but that's another story. Okay, so if you've got a safe place to hide, don't tweet about it or live stream it because it's not going to be safe for very long. And frankly, in a zombie apocalypse, work to reinforce your home, but just stay home. You're not going to go anyplace that's going to be any safer. So fortify your home, stock it up, keep your lights off, move to the country. Okay, well, all right. By then it'll be too late. Just stay home.
Stairs. Make sure you have stairs.
Good. I didn't think about that. Yeah, stairs, no flat ground. Good. My number 4 was Dietland, and we have both spoken about how important this book is. And as a middle school teacher, as somebody who deals with young girls and watching their lights go out in them as they try to deal with all of this messaging. There's so much messaging when it comes to being a young woman, and it's hard to keep up with that messaging. And so I like this book because even as a little girl, I somehow managed to fight a lot of that messaging without really even trying. And I don't know how that happened. I got labeled as a tomboy when I was a little girl, and I was like, fine, I'm still faster than everybody, and I can throw harder than any boy. So, but so that was my messaging. But anyway, as far as this book goes, Jennifer, enough said. As far as I'm concerned, fat shaming is a hate crime, and we should treat it as such. Women, enough with the self-loathing. For God's sake, having a man is not the end-all be-all of anything. This book will really open your eyes about the diet industry. That chapter where she's reading The Adventures of Dietland, and it goes through all of the memorandums and all of the footnotes about what the diet industry, what they're really doing. And the truth is, if there's an industry that's about self-improvement, it's not. It's about making money for the company and using your self-consciousness and your I can't think of the term, but just using you against you is essentially what it is. And this book will piss you off, and it should piss you off, because what we endure as women is really, it colossally sucks. So,
it's I like when she says that the diet industry is the most successful failed industry. It is. Thrives on your failure. If you don't fail, they make less money.
They make less money, so they need you to keep failing so that they can continue to make money. And that's, it's gross. it's freaking gross. All right, number 3, Station 11. And I've spoken already about how much I love this book. Again, it's another apocalypse story. But one of the reasons I like this, it's literally one of the most beautifully written books I've ever read. She does such a great job of the importance of relationships in this. And that is one of the things in this book that transcends the character or what time it is or where they are. Just a great book. Makes you think about what's important in your life, whether you're an actor in Toronto or you're stuck in an airport, days after the apocalypse, Number 2 is The Stand, yet another apocalypse story. But as far as I'm concerned, this is the mother of all apocalypse stories. This is an epic book. It's a tale of good and evil. And though the God part of it sort of gets under my skin after a while, in terms of that blind allegiance to God, and there's no real explanation to that. And again, that's to me, that's something worth thinking about. It's the first book that I read. I read this when I was like 19 or 20. And it was like, I couldn't believe how much I was in love with these characters and how much I mourned when things happened to them in the book, and that you really just have a stake in who they are and what they're going through. And that's one of the things Stephen King does really good. He's an underrated in terms of his character development. He does that really well. He takes his time with it. This is a long read. This is, it's a 1,000-page book, but and this is specifically the unabridged, the complete and uncut version, which came out in the early 90s. Worth your time. And again, if things go sideways in this country, really on your own. Okay.
Really. Yeah.
Really?
No, it's very the God in this in Stephen King's The Stand is very Old Testament. So you either have
Very.
100% allegiance or you are damned. So
For your
that's
jam.
very Old Testament.
Agreed. Agreed. And number one, The Hobbit. Still my favorite book of all time. This is the first book that I read where I cried when I finished, just because I'd finished it. I was so sad to finish this book. I found myself, as I was getting towards the end, sipping the pages of it because I just loved it so much. And it's like I want to know how the story ends, but the story became such an important part of who I was as a 12-year-old girl. That it was just a profoundly awesome book for me. It's the first great story about what happens to us when we step away from our comfort. And when you're a 12-year-old girl living in Sturgis, Michigan, where everything is super comfortable, that's a really important message along the way. It's the first book that really made me want to go outdoors and be an outdoor girl.
Well, it's not just that like living in a small town like that is comfortable. It's what's not only are you comfortable, so it's hard to step yourself out of it, but nobody expects you to step out of your bounds. You know, that would be, it's considered almost disloyal or I'll use the word queer only in that you get the look of, and I don't mean sexual orientation, I mean the look of you're not right when you step out. And that's, you know, so that, and that's, and the village of the Hobbit, you know, the Shire is that small town, you know, it's so comfortable and lovely and you can be successful here. Why would you ever want to do anything else? So,
well, and I always thought it was funny, you know, Bilbo Baggins was so well respected in the Shire because he never had any adventures. And so that was like a standard for respect, is that you don't do anything adventurous. And it's like, what fun is that?
But, you know, it depends on what you want. Do you want respect or do you want adventure? You can't have both.
You want adventure. I know, and that's a bummer. That always kind of bummed me out. I feel like every kid should read this book. I really do, and I feel like every adult should read it right along with them, because it's a good story. It's, you know, it's very, you know, kid friendly in the sense that, you know, there's lots of very intense things that happen, and there is of course some violence that happens with it. But, you know, 12 years old was about the right time for me to read that book, and I just, you know, and it's interesting because you see Bilbo's character change so much, but he exhibits, I think, great character and integrity throughout the book, especially in the end when he steals the Arkenstone, hoping to avoid a war, but then, you know, gives the Arkenstone to Gandalf, and then goes back to be with the dwarves in order to defend the treasure. So that was. Again, I thought that was really interesting because he could have just stayed there and been safe and avoided this conflict, and he didn't do it. So, you know, like I said, just one of those books that I've always loved and has never left my heart. And I think it's a good story. So,
yeah.
So anyway, there you go. As far as my honorable mentions, Jurassic Park, which is, again, the movie is very different than the book. The movie is kind of fun, kind of roll up, very Steven Spielberg. The book is not. The book is dark. The book is pessimistic. The book is, again, ahead of its time in the sense that, you know, if corporations could clone dinosaurs tomorrow, they would absolutely do it because they want that money. Again, it's the idea that corporations are going to make decisions for us that they have no right to make. So there you go. Gone Girl. Every married couple should read Gone Girl. Everybody should read Gone Girl. Color Purple, Handmaid's Tale, Dolores Claiborne, Oryx and Crake, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and the Harry Potter series. These are all things that were close to my top 5. And just so much to read, so little time. So, yeah. And
go ahead.
No, you.
When I was teaching, when I was still at Adams Middle School, and I had an ecosystem unit to teach for 3 or 4 years, I had my class. we did it together. We read the book Jurassic Park. So 3 or 4 years, we actually read that book together as a class because it fits so well with our ecosystem and environment unit. About I had one of my benchmarks. We had benchmarks at the time. One of the benchmarks was human impact on the environment, and I thought it was an excellent example of how of human impact on the environment, a very extreme version of that. So, and then I also got together with my ELA teachers so that because we had this program where kids read and tested, so the kids could we read the book together and then they could test on it, and then they could get they got a grade for my class and a grade for their ELA class. So
Nice,
it was a
very
great
cool.
book, and it's not really. Of course, you know, if you have like seventh graders that are at reading at grade level, they can certainly read and understand this. But I had a wide range of kids, so I read it out loud to them, just so, and then we could go back and talk about it and explain. But there's no reason why, you know, middle school students could not read that book. So that was another thing.
Yeah, there's definitely accommodations you can make for that, but it's again, as far as I think it's one of Michael Crichton's best books. And again, as far as that idea that humans overstep their bounds in terms of nature over and over again, this is a very deliberate case of that, you know.
Yeah.
And it's
So Jurassic Park is, I think, a really, really good. If you've never read, if you've just seen the movie's a blast, like you said.
It is fun. But, great movie.
You know, the book is really, really gives you a lot to chew on. So
it does.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I agree with all of you. I wasn't a big fan of the Lord of the Ring trilogy. I loved The Hobbit a lot, but I could never get through the first book. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so boring. I hate it. It was the first time I saw a movie that I liked the movie better than the book.
No, there's no doubt. I mean, I've only read the Lord of the Rings trilogy once because once is enough.
Right.
But I really loved it. I just, you know, it's such an, you know, one of the things I like about it is that, you know, Tolkien has done this amazing job of creating this, you know, Middle Earth of this universe. And like, so he's like got all of this history and all of this. And that's the part that I really appreciate. And that's why it's one of my top 5. But Fellowship of the Ring is a tough, that first half of Fellowship of the Ring, especially the whole, you know, Tom Bombadil portion of that book. Woo! Steven Jackson, that was a nice edit out of the movie. Good job. The purists are like, he took out the Tom Bombadil stuff. I'm like, yeah, he did.
Thank you. Yeah, I can only barely get through that, and I'm like, all right, done. But Duncan would agree with you. Both the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings trilogy are on his top 5 books.
Sure.
He reads. He goes back. In fact, he finds like these, books that Tolkien wrote before or after. You know, just
unreadable.
He reads. Yeah, but he reads them, and he's telling me all about the history, and I'm like, can we talk about brewing?
Don't you got some magic cards to go sort, you know?
Exactly. But like I said, I'm just glad when he reads a book that doesn't have a beer on it. So I'm like, okay, baby, whatever.
Cool.
But I mean, cool. And the thing about Tolkien, if nothing else, you have to give him all this credit for really remaking this genre of fantasy.
Yeah.
Anybody that wrote fantasy after reading Lord of the Rings owes a big debt, or The Hobbit owes a big debt to him. So
yeah,
he's if you've never read The Hobbit, if for no other reason, and you like, if you read fantasy and haven't read The Hobbit, shame on you. But if you don't like fantasy, read The Hobbit anyway, because you'll love it, and it may open you up to another genre. So
yeah, like I said, just a great book. So cool. Well, Anne, I believe we have fictioned it up. I think we have discussed many excellent works of fiction here, at least giving people something to something to think about, something to tap into. There's good books on this list. So some of them are a little heavy. It's okay. It's okay to lift heavy things. We can do that. We can lift heavy things.
We can do it. Exactly.
Right.
We can do it.
So there. Yep. So anyway, I believe we have Lisa and the Randy with us this week. Lisa and Randy from Tin Cat Studio. They said they would be with us on Wednesday. So we're going to plan on that. We're going to plan on them being with us on Wednesday. And did you pick out a movie for this weekend, brothers?
No, but I'll have one before the end of the day. I think I have one in the back of my head that I want, but I will let you know by the end of today,
Sweet.
So that you can have plenty of time. It'll be one that you've already seen, so it's not like you won't have to I've never seen this before.
Fine.
So.
I'm a full-time working woman as of Tuesday, and school starts for reals on Tuesday. So,
For reals.
But we're still going to try and keep the brother sisters train rolling because it's fun, and then we get to see each other. So yeah, someday, Ann, I'm actually going to come back to Michigan, and then we could have a brother sisters from like Crust or something in Fenton, so we can have like brother sisters eating stuff. Yay! Yay! Someday.
Yay! That sounds fabulous.
Cool.
All right.
All right. Have a great week, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Thank you. See you guys later. Bye.
Bye.